Hey there, beautiful souls. I'm Colleen Lockoff.
And I'm Meredy Lockoff.
And welcome to Spiritual Sisters with Sass, the podcast where two sisters with a passion for spirituality and a touch of sass come together to explore the exciting world of self-improvement.
That's right, Colleen. We embarked on this incredible journey together, diving into different self-improvement techniques, yoga practices, and a whole array of life experiences.
Yeah, and through it all, we've managed to create lives that are abundant, happy, and constantly evolving. It's been a wild ride, hasn't it, Meredy?
You bet, sis. We've got two very different perspectives on life, but that's what makes this podcast so special. I'm all about diving in head first into life's adventures and embracing every challenge with a bit of sass. While Colleen here, she's got her own unique approach.
Yep, that's me. And I'm all about the yoga, mindfulness, and finding my zen. And together we make the perfect balance.
So whether you're looking for some wisdom, a few laughs, or just some heartfelt stories, you're in the right place. We're here to share our personal experiences and insights with you, all while exploring the wild and diverse world of self-improvement.
So grab your headphones and get ready for a fantastic journey with us. Spiritual Sisters with Sass is here to uplift, inspire, and keep it real.
Thanks for tuning in, lovely listeners. Let's dive in.
Spirit and sass. Here we go. All right. Welcome, everyone, to Spiritual Sisters with Sass. Today, I'm super excited because I get to talk shop. We have Jen Johnson coming on from Ontario, Canada. We're Canadian as well, so that's kind of cool. And she's come on to share a pretty cool story. So I'm going to let her tell you. So welcome, Jen. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so I'm Jen Johnson. I'm out of Hamilton, Ontario. I've been an ER nurse for just over 16 years now, looking into 17 real hard. And yeah, have been kind of through hospitals, big, small, ERs, big, small, pediatric, adult, the whole bit. And it's been an interesting go all the way around just to figure out that honestly, everything's the same. The medicine's the same. It's just the personalities that are different, the politics that are different. And then COVID hit, and then it was just right down the tubes with that.
Right.
But yeah, it's been a lot of time to get back to being me, and writing has been a huge help in that portion. So it's been an interesting go of finding me and coming back out of it, and then still nursing.
I feel like that's such a common thing with COVID. I see it with the addictions as well. Like it put us into a place that was an incredibly triggered state. And a lot of people haven't come out of that yet. We're 4 years later, and a lot of these people haven't even come out of it. Never mind, like started doing the work on themselves. And yet there's others who have become incredibly conscious because of it.
Yeah.
So in a lot of ways, obviously everything happens for a reason, but in a lot of ways, I'm just so grateful that it taught me so much about myself. Not grateful for the experience per se, but grateful that I am where I am now.
Oh, 100%. Because, how do you all of a sudden come face to face with your own mortality very, very quickly and have attorneys come forward to volunteer to do our wills for free? And you're like, oh, we're not expected to survive. This is fantastic. Like, okay, thanks, guys. I know you're trying to be helpful, but oh my God.
Yeah.
Right. I know when we were off recording, I had said that my experience was here I am sitting in Costa Rica, the whole world shuts down. I'm like, oh my God, this is what I've been training for my entire adult nursing life. Was there was always some pandemic or epidemic that was going to happen. We had H1N1, which was just a total flop. We had SARS, which was a total flop. We had Ebola, which was a total flop. Like all of these things that we had a decontamination room put in, and there was so many things that we were trained for this to happen. And then you said it happened and it was like a shit show anyways.
Oh, forget about it, right? They're just like, oh, it'll just be a week. It'll just be two. It'll just be four. It'll just be another month. It'll just be another month. Like it just dragged on. And, I don't know at what point we all just kind of went, okay, well, I guess this is real life now for
Right.
wherever we're going. And the policies changing morning to afternoon to night, and you want to have faith in your hospital system and your healthcare system, and you're just like, oh great, nobody knows what we're doing. This is
Yeah.
just utterly fantastic.
But hey, we've got Bill Gates like promoting or
He he is the
promulgating.
medical genius. Come on now.
This is gonna happen, and he already knew. Why didn't we just put him in charge?
Yeah. But truly, like we had been told, a pandemic comes once every roughly 100 years, Spanish flu and the plague and all this kind of stuff. And so we were more than overdue. And so even when, SARS popped up and bird flu and H1N1 and Ebola and all that, everyone's like, oh, this is going to be it. And then we're like, oh, okay, woof, we're done. And then, the next year, something new. And then COVID. And you're like, woohoo, okay. Oh, this is okay. We're not messing around with this one. All right. I guess this is it.
I remember when SARS was happening because I was in med school at the time. I was super burnt out of nursing and I thought like being a doctor would be the answer. And so I remember there was a specific, we were looking at microbiology and like pathology and all of the things. And there was a specific class on SARS. And the doctor that was running the lecture said, 11 people this year have died, or not SARS, Ebola. He said 11 people have died of Ebola this year, and over 600,000 died of AIDS. But what is the focus right now that we're all worried we're going to die of this like blood thinning, bleeding out of our eyes experience?
Yeah.
And yet it was actually not really that big of a deal. I mean, it was for the people that ended up like passing away in such terrible.
But what about the people who are also suffering from AIDS and heart disease, which is one of the number one killers in the world? Let's talk about the ones that actually matter.
Yeah.
Even mental health.
The ones that are long-term, every year killers, not the ones that come out quickly.
Yeah.
Mental health.
Oh, just mental health and addictions. Holy crap. We haven't even scratched the surface, like nowhere near the surface, and, being where I am, it's, it's supposed to be kind of a quieter neighborhood, and it's older population, but we're very quickly expanding out towards Toronto, and Niagara's quickly expanding in, and so everyone's like, oh, we don't have addictions issues here. I'm like, yeah, you do, because everywhere does. I promise.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, we don't have, just because we don't have an overrun with homelessness or people coming in who are very obviously addicted. We're missing the people who are, look
before
well,
they become homeless. They're functioning addicts. And those are the ones that I see the most, because people who are on the streets can't afford my treatments. Yeah. But the people who are, CEOs, at home, stay-at-home moms. Like COVID exacerbated this so much that I see people who are like, it started out as, epidemics here are not, and pandemics are, heart disease, AIDS, addiction, not dealing with our feelings, because addiction is the solution, not the problem. Absolutely. The addiction is the solution that they've given themselves to fix their problem, which is that they didn't want to feel anymore.
Right. Absolutely. Just want to be numb. And I mean, 100%. Absolutely.
We need to be myself taught coping mechanisms.
Oh, man. All the things that they taught us in high school and middle school that really could have, we could have gone a different way with it, even just to start like scraping the surface of coping mechanisms and like, okay, yes, there are a multitude of different coping mechanisms, but what's really going to harm you in the long run? Because it's not until you really see people dying of end-stage liver failure from chronic alcohol use, where their abdomen is so huge that they can't breathe anymore. Or, the smokers who, pack 2-pack, 3-pack a day for 25, 35-year history, and they're now chronic obstructive pulmonary disease where they also can't breathe, but for a different reason. Yeah. And you're just going like, how did this start? Like, if we were to rewind all the way back, how did this start? And why were we doing this?
Yeah.
And it's those root causes that, I mean, the Emerge is the perfect place to just slap a band-aid on it and you're walkie-talkie and off you go and treat them and street them. And that's just it. But every now and again, if I'm lucky, I have one moment that somebody stands out. I'm able to talk to somebody, and then it's like, oh, that's the reason. Like, okay. So I had a 16-year-old kid come in and, just plastered, just so drunk, out of his mind, blackout drunk. It's a Friday into a Saturday night. And so I'm like, it's just a weekend, whatever. He finally kind of sobers up enough. The family comes in, the older brother comes in, and he's going like, the older brother, I was already giving Nurse Ratchet to start, but the older brother like gave it to him 100 times better. I'm like, yes, family giving some discipline. This is fantastic. And, the kid finally sobers up enough to the point where he's like, well, it's not a big deal. I've been drunker than this before. I'm like, pardon me? Like, you are 16, sir? What is happening? And get to talking to the kid. And he goes, I said, okay, well, what happened that, how long has this been going on? Oh, about 6 months or so. And I'm like, Jesus, there's 6 months. Okay. And out of my mouth, before I even realized what I was saying, I said, well, what happened 6 months ago? And the kid turns to me and goes, I watched my dad die in our kitchen. I'm like, pardon? Like, okay, so I've come at this all the wrong way. We've done a very quick turnaround, and I'm going, holy cow. I'm like, okay, so why do you drink then? He goes, well, I can't sleep unless I'm blackout drunk. And so I'm doing this multiple times in a week so that I can actually sleep, because otherwise I'm having nightmares, the intrusive thoughts, like very obviously PTSD. I'm going, okay. Okay, we need to. So I go back to my doc. I'm like, so you thought how we thought he was just drunk. Big problem. We're gonna have to 100% 180. We need social work. We need family supports. All this kind of stuff. And my doc goes, oh, okay. So do the quick turnaround, and in talking to both him and the brother didn't realize that was what was happening. Um, you know, 16-year-old kid is acting like he's 40. He's like, if I need therapy, I'll pay for it myself. My mom's already stressed out with costs and things. And he's trying to get dressed. He's like, I gotta go to work at like 1 o'clock this afternoon. I'm like, dude, it's 6 a.m. and you're barely standing now. Like, I don't think so. So talking to the family, like the brother and the kid, and I'm just like, okay, this kid's already puked everywhere. He's already in a gown and a diaper, party pants, because he's already peed himself in the bed and the whole bit, and covered in puke. And here I am, as we're like trying to discharge him, I'm like hugging him and kind of like tearing up with him, because I'm like, oh man, this is so heavy. And did something that I've never done before. And I gave the kid my number, and I said, look, at whatever you need, if you're struggling, if you need anything, here's my number. I'm up a lot of nights, night shifts, the whole works. But if you need anything, please text me, call me, whatever. Never has. But it was just one of those moments where, like, thank God I had an extra moment, because I never usually do. And this is at 6:30 in the morning. You're wrapping up your night, you're getting ready to go home, and here I am hugging this puke covered kid.
That's great. Like, I would definitely want to dive into, you had said you're a pagan empath nurse, bringing holistic side of things into nursing. So I want to talk about that. I want to share a story that's similar, but like different. So I come on, it's night shift. That was my fave, was night shifts. And I come on and I'm in the treat and release. So that's where like everybody's in recliners. They're like level 3, tummy pain, like not yet diagnosed, all that kind of stuff. So I go, ha 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 ha. They're gonna give me this patient to go, just go in and discharge her. It's super easy. Take out her IV. Yeah. I go in. Hey, looks like you're ready to go. She lays into me, fuck that, da da da, starts yelling at me. When are you gonna fix this? It's been 6 weeks. And she starts to say more. I'm not allowed to take the IV out. She's not going anywhere. So I go back like, oh, that was funny. You guys are so funny. Like, what's the story here? So I get it. For the past 6 weeks, she's been coming to the ER. She can't stop vomiting. And she has gone through CT scan. Like, she's had all the things, x-rays, blood work, everything's normal. So I'm taking my yoga teacher training at the time. I'm in med school. I'm still nursing. And I've got this like new holistic light on things. I'm so enlightened. So I go back in and I just learned about something called German New Medicine. And so I go back in and I say to her, like, if you're puking, right, like you can't stomach something.
Yeah.
So I don't say this to her, but I go in and I say, like, what's been going on? Like, what else is happening in your life? After she yells at me about how we're not doing shit, I'd say we've literally done everything that we can. You know, we're not your family doctor.
Yep.
And I'm gonna let you go. Like, still your blood work's fine, even though you've been puking nonstop for 6 weeks. So what's been going on that's like not medical? And she tells me, are you joking? Right? She's so not open to holistic care as well. She's lower socioeconomic status and I'm just supposed to fix her. And so she says, are you joking right now? Like, what does anything have to do with this? You want to know? You want to know that I'm taking care of my father because he can't take care of himself and he's got no effing money? And now like children, family, and they're going to take my kids away because he's apparently molesting them. And you think that this matters? And I'm like,
Yes.
Are you for real?
Yeah.
Like, are you? And I'm just like, I'm so kind and so compassionate in this moment. Like, we have just figured it out. Can't you
Yeah.
see?
Yes.
And she tells me it's like speaking to a fucking brick wall. And I was like, I know the feeling. And I took her IV out and we discharged her off, and that was it. But it was like, here I have this total insight. And
Yeah.
I find out that like back in the day in the 50s, like the doctor would have a long appointment with you and he wanted to know what was happening in your life, not just, oh, you've got a high blood pressure, but like, why do you have high
Why?
pressure? And I just like connected this all in this moment. I'm going to change all of the medical field. I have the answer. And this woman laughs at me, and then the doctor laughs at me.
See, and all of this blows my mind because this is the thing. This is like, hi, when I go to my doctor, I need to be asked, okay, well, what are you eating? Okay. That needs to
Yeah.
be like one of the major questions because my food is determining my entire health, for one.
Yeah.
For two, what's going on in your life? And my doctor is a very old school hippie. He's got the long beard that he braids, he's got long hair. And he literally is so. I told my sister about this. He sits with my kids and takes their shoes off and then cracks their toes. He cracks their fingers. And I asked him one time, I was like, why do you do that? And he's like,
Yeah.
because they feel connected to you when you're touching them. He's like, I'm a doctor. They don't feel connected to me. He's like, so for me to
Yeah.
make them feel connected so they'll open up, I need to like put my hands on them. And appropriate ways to do so is he's like, and then he would tell them like, don't listen to your mom when she says it's going to swell your knuckles and things like that. But he also always asks when I go in and I'm like, hey, so, like, I don't know, I have stomach pain, my butthole hurts, something. He's like, so what is actually going on right now in your life then? Like, what has caused you the biggest stresses right now? And I'm like, oh, it's nothing. It's fine. He's like, well, clearly it's not nothing because it
Yeah.
stimulated something within your body. And any kind of stress typically, and here's the science of acupuncture behind it and the energies in your body is that the stress meridian is the same. It runs in the same area as your stomach meridian. So when we're talking about stress, it's going to hit your digestive, and typically in what like the energy side of things is you're going to go one way or another. So I'm the person who when I get stressed out I stop eating, and other people get stressed out and all they do is eat. So it's really interesting because I feel like that hearing you guys talk about this, like more doctors, they don't have time. And I understand that, but
Yeah.
make the time because you're sending someone away who's going to come back to you because you didn't get to the underlying cause. Same as addiction. Here, I'm just going to give you a pill, hop on this pill. Well, the underlying problem is their trauma that they haven't dealt with. And even if you give them an SSRI, you're not solving the problem because their endorphins are not working properly. Their brain is not working. It takes 14 to 18 months for their brain to chemically recover. And you want them to suffer for the next 14 to 18 months in depression, in anxiety, in high stress. But you also want them to stay sober during that time.
Yeah.
How are they supposed to do that? So that's why, like with Laser Quit, we are able to help people because we allow their brains to go back to normal levels to be able to recover properly so that now they're not depressed, anxious, stressed out. They're not suffering in all those ways. They're actually seeing results because their brain is at almost a normal level, as normal as it can be after long-term use. But, we get them to a place in their head, in their mind, in their actual brain, to a place where their body can function a lot more normally.
Yeah.
And this is, I think, where healthcare issues are stemming from is that we're not dealing with the underlying causes. People are getting pills and being sent home, and then being
Well,
handed more pills on top of that, and then more pills
which
on top of
then,
that. And now you're taking
and then the
10
side
pills.
effects, and then you get the
Yes.
pills for the side effects,
The
like 100%.
polypharmacy. Yep.
Oh yeah, my husband's a great example of this. So, ended up developing kidney stones, and so they give you medication like Advil for those, but it's really hard in the stomach. So he typically, he's one of these people who doesn't have coffee in the morning, doesn't eat in the morning, barely eats lunch, and then binges for dinner. And so he's taking these medications, around the clock while he's dealing with the kidney stones. Doesn't he perf his stomach? Then he's got a bleeding ulcer, and then he's got pain, and like just down the rabbit hole.
Yeah.
And then again, he's having pain, he's not feeling good, so he's going to binge. And then, then he shuts down, then he's depressed because he's gaining weight. And then, it's just the spiral is just insanity.
The
And,
society that we're living in has us all like the way he eats, where he
oh
doesn't
yeah,
eat breakfast because he doesn't have time because he's too tired in the morning to get out of bed to have
yeah,
breakfast because I don't have time. And then at lunch, I only get so long and I didn't have time to prep myself a lunch. So if I do eat lunch, I'm going to eat something fast foodish, and that's shitty for me. And then I get home and my wife has made this wonderful dinner, or I make a wonderful dinner, and now I'm going to eat as much as I possibly can because I'm so hungry.
yeah.
And then this is my favorite. Well, I'm using the fasting method. No, the fuck you're not. No, the fuck you're not. You are just not eating enough. And my son has literally just gone down this path with it. And I get it because I did it too. But he just went down this path. And then my boyfriend is super fit, and my boyfriend is an eater. He just eats all the time. And so my son has been talking to my boyfriend, and everything that I've said, my son
Yeah.
has been like, bleh, bleh, bleh. And then he's like, talks to my boyfriend, and my boyfriend's like, yeah, all of the things that she said, like, do it. And then all of a sudden my son's like, oh, and now he's like eating breakfast and taking a lunch to work and working out and doing all these things. And I was like, I just like talked out of my ass for the last 5 years. But also, thank you, because now my son is taking it seriously in his 20s. He's 22. He's turning 23 in 3 months, but he's going to have this opportunity now to live a healthy life way before I did because I didn't even start taking it serious till I was 40.
Right.
And that's the
So
way it goes.
how does it feel to be a self-proclaimed pagan empathic nurse trying to bring alternative or holistic medical practices into the Canadian medical system?
It's hard, right? Because it's very like you can't just come out and say, oh, I'm a pagan witch, depending on who you're around, right? You credibility and your license and all this other kind of stuff. So, you know, are there some people at work that know I'm a witch? Absolutely. I'm actually more open now than I ever have been with it. And you jokingly say, but they're like, well, how did you know about that person? I'm like, haha, I'm a witch. And they're like, oh, ha ha ha. And I'm like, they
But
see
for
the moon
real,
earrings, the triple moon goddess. I'm wearing stuff to work that says Supreme Witch, Salem, Massachusetts. I've got my mug that says witch, and like I'm not hiding it. Like people will tell you who they are if you're paying attention.
Yeah.
And so I'm not hiding it, but the amount of times where you're kind of going, oh, my gut's not, something's off, like I'm just not picking it up properly. And my and my washer apparently is causing a ton of fun times. Gotta love it.
that's okay. We can't hear it, so you're
Yeah.
okay.
Oh,
Yeah.
perfect.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah, it's just it's one of those things where talking about it, finally opening up, talking about trusting your gut, trusting your intuition and the feelings about what's going on, we're finally starting to talk about it more and more.
Yeah.
And so, especially ER nurses, right? Like you're attuned to picking up on people and their vibrations and the emotions of things very, very quickly, right? If all of a sudden something changes, you're like, nope,
Yeah.
we're not happening there. So when somebody is, either at triage or is your patient and you're going, I don't like the look of this. And so being able to take it to your physician, sometimes you just have to change it up a little bit as to how you're, putting it forward. You're like, hey, I just really don't know about Mrs. Smith in 6, what's going on. I just don't know. Like, could you take a look for me? Either you're doing that to a fellow coworker or you're doing that to your physician. The physicians call it spidey sense, and
Yep.
that's acceptable terminology.
Yep.
Calling it nursing intuition, it seems too woo-woo for people at this point. But if I say, oh, I trust my gut, well, that's acceptable,
Yep.
or to say, I'm just advocating for my patient, that's acceptable. So it's trying to very slowly change the wording around things, opening up conversations more often than not, because when we're talking about it at 3 a.m., along with the ghost stories,
Yep.
and the feeling of trust your gut comes up, all of a sudden, oh, well, I've done that,
Yep.
I've done that. And you're like, well, why aren't they teaching it then? And you're like, okay, well, maybe there's just no science to support it. Sure. No, there's a ton of peer-reviewed evidence-based science to support it. So we got to start teaching it, and it's kind of been my life's mission, since COVID, that, oh no, this is the path that I'm supposed to be on, and this is the universe smacking me in the face to be like, no, 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 we're gonna go over here now, and you're gonna write a book, you're gonna bring people along, you're gonna talk about it. Are you gonna be skewered? Probably. Do I
Right.
care? Not so much.
Right.
But coming to terms with it, especially the empathic portions of it, where you're you're picking up on people all the time. So walking into a code situation where they're performing CPR and the family's beside themselves, like, of course you can't help but like get wrapped up in that emotion, unless you're really good at putting up boundaries, putting up shields, and blocking it. And that's a whole other thing that once you finally come to terms with, oh, that's what's happening. Oh, well, now I can wear my crystals. Now I can kind of visualize myself kind of putting on the trench coat and putting up the wall just a little bit. Does it doesn't really allow itself to kind of lead into super compassionate care, because it's hard to kind of let yourself open a bit once you kind of put it on. But every now and again somebody will crack through, and like that kid cracked through in an instant, and I wasn't wanting it, I wasn't ready for it.
Right.
It just happened, and I just happened to be there.
We had I worked in the Abbotsford Emerge and several other ones, but that was like my main was there in Abbotsford, BC. And one of the things we had the fern. Have you ever heard of a fern?
I know of a fern, like the plant fern. I
Right.
don't know of
No.
any
It's a,
associated
it's a
things
fucking
with it.
emergency room nurse because they eat their young and they're assholes. So we used to
But
have,
why are we assholes?
I
But
mean,
why are
fair.
we assholes? How much crap do we have to take in a day for us not to finally kind of shut down enough to go, okay, like, I'm not
Totally.
going to put my heart and soul out there, because guess what? The few times that I've put myself out there and then I've gotten taken, well, now I feel like an ass. Now I
Right.
feel like well, how did I not see that, drug seeker coming, or that story was completely fake, or that,
Right.
how did I not put together that that guy was beating that girl, and like the story, like, why wasn't I paying attention? So you harden very, very quickly. And then to be called every name in the book and every language in the book, fairly often, yeah, you get pretty good at being able to just deflect a bit and being like, oh, you can hurt my feelings? That's adorable. I don't have any.
I don't have
Like,
any.
I
Hello.
don't have any. If I don't have any feelings, you can't
Yeah.
hurt me. But then, you do come across these cases that, you're the first point of contact for everybody. So it's hard not to fall into them. Somebody getting a new cancer diagnosis, somebody getting, you're overhearing the doc telling the family members that their family member's not going to make it, and trying to talk to them about palliative care. A kid getting a type 1 diabetes diagnosis, and, their whole world is shifting now, right? So you can feel for those parents, you feel for that kid, you try to reframe it as best you can for them in the moment, but knowing full well that a lot of type 1 diabetics unfortunately, like the neuropathy is so painful that then they get into drug use. It's prescription drug use to start, and then that gets too expensive, and then that leads to, um, the gastroparesis and the nausea and the vomiting and all that kind of stuff. And you feel bad because you're like, oh man, I really hope that you're one of the ones that doesn't have to see this. Um, so it's hard when somebody actually breaks through and you're like, oh man, like that.
Well, I think there's two
It
things that come
sucks.
with this. I think first and foremost, I think as an ER nurse, we already come with trauma.
Oh,
And
for sure.
we're already in the space of being able to compartmentalize emotions, not necessarily feel them. We may
Mhm.
go in because we want to help people, because essentially we want to help ourselves and we don't know
Yeah.
how. So we move
Yeah.
into a place where we're super stoked and then we get taken advantage of. We're the ones putting up the blocks, which we don't really have to because it's okay to have emotion, but we were already taught that
Yeah.
emotions are bad. So we come in hardened and ready to eat our young.
Yes.
The other
Yeah.
piece is, there are places where, so we used to have the Fern newsletter because we all joked about the fact that we were all bitches. And
Yes.
we
We come to
would,
terms with it real fast.
yes, exactly. And we would have actually the Spidey Sense of the Month. So there would be like a
Ooh.
featured article about a nurse that had followed her gut and had gone beyond what the images or, the scans or whatever were telling us. And I remember the first time it popped out because we had just moved from an old hospital to a new hospital. And it was an older nurse that had been around for a very long time. And we had an STEMI
Yeah.
come in. And so it's a heart attack,
Really,
basically, like
the
very
the really big heart
basic.
attack.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that
The
you can
close to the
see.
clutching of the chest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we have this guy come in, but CT, or not CT, the ECG is totally normal, and so is the blood work. And so Sheree, the nurse that was taking care of him, was like, no, it's not.
Yeah.
He's having a STEMI. And I remember that there was like the docs were against it. And she just was like, no. Like she was older than
Yeah.
double older than most of the docs that were there. And she was like, listen to me, you little shit. Like this is the way that it is. He's having a heart attack and we're going to treat him like this. And so she reordered against doctor's orders the ECG, and boom, what do we see? ST elevation. And then what do we see? Tropes are positive. But there was like this time in which
A
he was
window.
here, and they're just like, oh, chest pain not yet diagnosed, ready to send him home. So I do
Mm-mm.
think that there's the ability to be a little more holistic. A lot of
For
nurses are
sure.
taking yoga teacher training, not as a way to
Hmm.
become a yoga teacher, but that yoga, more than just what you see in a studio, yoga is a
More
way of
than a
life,
class.
right? It
Yes.
really teaches you so much more about actually following your intuition. I think one of the things that you said is like being empathic. I think everybody's empathic, and a
Yeah.
lot of us just shut it down.
Yeah.
For me, I instead of dealing with it, because emotions are bad, because I'm supposed to be the strong, like older sister, take care of everything, I'm never going to feel anything. But what I am going to do is drink alcohol. And these pills look pretty great. And those psychedelics look pretty amazing that can save my life. But therapy is a bunch of bullshit and I'll never go. So I fit
Yeah.
right into being a Fern. And yet at the same time, myself and a couple other nurses were taking yoga teacher training and starting to apply these tactics within the ER. What happened for me was really I was in this place where I kept getting like that woman with the puking. I kept getting her over and over again. Like, what are you going to do to fix me? What are you going to do to fix me? And one of my like nemesis was fibromyalgia,
Oh
right?
yeah.
A diagnosis that when I went to nursing school, probably you as well, it was a psychiatric disorder. It wasn't actually a medical
Yep.
disorder. It holds a lot with it. And a lot of the time, people coming to the ER with fibromyalgia or a history of that are drug seeking. And so what I would do is just apply that to everybody. Fuck you, you're a drug seeker, you suck, you're fake. Like that was my attitude, and I'm owning it. And I don't feel that way any longer, just saying, because now I see the opposite end of what happens when you don't deal with your trauma.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
The only way that it can work its way out of our body, but that's a whole nother podcast in general. And when I was in yoga, I remember what I would get is someone coming to me and I would feel it. They'd be like, I have fibromyalgia. And I'd be like, "Urgh." And then they'd be like, I'm just wondering, what could I do to feel better? And I was like, what?
Oh my
What
God.
can you do? Not what can I do for you? And that to me, it was like universal guidance. My dad was like, listen, stay in med school, keep being a nurse because people are going to listen to you more. If you
Mhm.
have these credentials behind you, don't leave. And I was just to a point where I cannot stay any longer. I'm going to lose it. I'm going to probably shoot somebody. I'm going to go postal.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
this isn't helpful because everybody just wants me to fix them and they don't want to do shit all for themselves, right? They're in for high blood sugar eating McDonald's because they had to wait for 6 hours in the ER and then starving.
Yes.
And it's
Yeah.
like, oh, well, you don't want to let your blood sugars
Here,
drop
have some
below
juice.
25.
Yes.
So yeah, there's my rant, but also like I think that we really can bring this in, and it feels like almost my shift was from being in the medical system now to supporting people that are still in the medical system and still have that like energy to create a shift or a change.
Yeah.
This always takes me back. I remember when Lynn left nursing, I always supported it because I remember being around and her being like, "Oh my God, you guys," and then tell us a story, and I'd just be like horrified by these stories. Like I just was like, "Oh my God, this is what you did today," and she'd be so excited about it.
Yeah.
And then right after she left, we were having a conversation, and she said, "I read Deepak Chopra." And he was an emergency room doctor. And when he said, I am at my best when other people are at their worst, she said that hit so hard for me that I can't do what I'm doing anymore. And I just like paused and I was like, this is what I was feeling when she would tell me the story. Like I would just feel so like, how can this be cool for you? Like, how is this an exciting moment for you? That being said, she also had some really interesting insights. Like nurses are so aware of the whole like, oh, it's a full moon, somebody needs to check if it's a full moon because tonight's crazy kind of thing. Like, you know what I mean? Like you guys have some insights into things that like
Oh
people don't
yeah.
pay attention to. And I hear people all the time be like, what does the moon have to do with anything? And I'm like, well, if you're made of 70% water and it controls
Water.
the tides, I'm just saying maybe they know something. But it takes me every time I hear this, like, or hear even Deepak Chopra, I immediately go to that spot of him saying, when I felt the best when everyone else was at their worst. And then it hit Lynn so hard because it was so true for her. Like, she'd come home so pumped about how crazy her night was, which is why she loved night shift, is
Yeah.
because that's when the crazy shit happened. It wasn't during the day. Crazy
Yeah.
shit happened at night. You know, the shootings happened at night. And this crazy guy came in and he had like cut off someone's finger and then cut his own tongue off, kind of like, and I'd just be like, the fuck? That's how you spent your night? And I'd
Yeah.
be like,
And
I
I'm
had
so
this
pumped
really,
about it.
yeah. And I'd be like, I just had this really peaceful sleep, just saying. Like, while the world was falling apart, I was sleeping, just
Yes.
saying. And she'd be like, oh my God. And she'd just be so like jacked on it that she'd be home at 7 o'clock in the morning and she couldn't just go to sleep because she had
Yeah.
just had this psychotic, experience. And I was just like, how is this a life? Like her telling me the story, and I wasn't aware of it at the time, but her telling me the story put my nervous system into like recoil immediately. And here she sits just like vibrating because of
Just
how exciting it was. And I'm just like,
Yeah.
whew, I can't. I don't even want to hear your story anymore. And then,
Yeah.
for me, just seeing her in that state, but it was a happy state because that's what you guys do to yourselves. You
Yeah, I
make
mean, don't
stuff
worry about
feelings off.
it. I'll just take 5 Gravol to go to sleep.
Gravel's the number one most abused drug by nurses, so don't
Right?
worry about it. Don't worry about it. It's
And for
fine.
anyone from the US, Gravol is like Dramamine. It's like it's an
Yeah.
anti-nauseant that was actually originally an antipsychotic, like most anti-nauseants, that it makes you very sleepy and tired. And in Canada, that one time I was at a BCNU, so the nursing union for registered nurses of British Columbia, and the woman said, you know, who here is struggling with this? She was bringing it out. And she said, how many gravel are you up to? And I wasn't up to 5, actually. I was up to like 2 or 3. And she said, 8.
What?
8. 8 gravel. Like, whoa, just to go to sleep after a night shift.
Yikes.
Like, again, that's not just falling asleep, that's blacking out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And not waking up,
Yeah.
just coming to.
Yeah.
And
And
a lot
still
of the
being
people-
drowsy and then going to work.
Yeah.
Yeah. And see, a lot of the people that I deal with too, I deal with CEOs. When I'm dealing with addictions, I'm dealing with CEOs, I'm dealing with nurses, I'm dealing with doctors, I'm dealing with high level professionals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I'm dealing with someone who manages thousands of people, but they're drunk all the time and they do cocaine every day, multiple times a day. Like, wow. But you guys are managing all these other people. Huh.
That's
So it really
why.
like makes you stop and think, because you guys as nurses are suffering with mental health because of what you guys do, but you're not supported with the mental health the way that you should be. And then you're going to manage my health. And I'm not
It's
saying
do
that to be
as I say,
offensive.
not as I do.
Yeah.
Yes. And I'm like I said, I'm not saying it to be offensive. I have overworked, overstimulated, over nervous systemed people giving me a med and then sending me home because they don't have the time to really find out what's wrong with me.
Yeah.
So that feels
So-
like that.
Well,
mic drop.
yes, except let's hear about your book though. And then
Oh,
we
yes.
can, yeah.
Yes. Let's hear
Yes.
about that.
Yeah.
So, Nursing Intuition, How to Trust Your Gut, Save Your Sanity, and Survive Your Career just came out on the 15th, which was the full moon, very purposefully.
Love it.
So born out of COVID trauma, and not knowing, you know, if I was to die, how do you explain to a 4 and 5-year-old at the time that mom chose to go to work? And so my answer was, well, let me write down my really good stories. So I had like 4. And then the really bad stuff started to come out and like pour out. And, you know, stuff that I hadn't dealt with for 14 plus years. And all that come rushing out. And I'm like, okay, so what do I do with this? And listening to a podcast, or online book review by Llewellyn. They were doing like online book fairs during COVID. And one of the books was Intuition at Work. And then the author was talking about her book, Intuition at Work. I'm like, Intuition at Work. I'm like, I use my intuition all the time at work. And it was just like this light went off. I'm like, okay, all right. So went back through the stories, and sure enough, here's intuition through every single story, good, bad, otherwise. You know, I had my intuition. Did I listen to it? Did I not? Did I say anything? Did I not? Was I believed? Was I not? And, you know, it's like, okay, so here's this theme that's running through everything and all my stories. But, you know, it's April 2020. The misinformation, disinformation is coming up real hard. I'm like, I would actually be risking my license, I feel like, if I were to put this book out without peer-reviewed supported evidence. So did the deep dive, and sure enough, so much intuition, like so much paperwork and studies and guidance on not just intuition, but intuition specifically in nursing. And I'm going, okay, that's it. There's the science. I've got it. It's, you know, APA formatted. It's within 5 years. It's all these kind of good things. I'm like, okay, now I don't have to worry about risking my license because it's science.
Right.
And so I'm like, you know, and nursing, they tell us if it's science backed, we should be teaching it. And so I'm like, okay, here we are. So this is going to be me going at it. So, you know, explaining intuition, how it feels, how to deal with it. And then my stories and just, you know, what happened. And if nothing else, if I need a new therapist, I just take the book and be like, so this is volume 1 of why I am the way I am. And read that at your leisure, and then we'll talk. I'm just gonna save myself like $5,000 right now. Here you go.
Yeah. I love that. Well,
But
thank you for sharing. So the book is called Nursing Intuition.
Nursing Intuition, How to Trust Your Gut, Save Your Sanity, and Survive Your Career.
Oh my God, I love that. I'm gonna tag all my nursing friends
Thank you.
on this, because I think that they could relate, really.
Yeah. If it helps one person, then all of it was worth it. 16 years of struggle and burnout and all of that was 100% worth it.
Yeah.
it's just that's all I'm hoping for.
Good for you.
Awesome.
Yeah, I love this.
Thank you for
so
sharing
much. And thank you
your
for joining
story.
us.
Yeah,
No, anytime. Thank you guys so much for having me.
for sure. All right, everyone. Thanks so much for joining, and feel free to purchase Jen's book. It sounds pretty great. Actually, we all have really fucking cool stories, so I'm sure there's a few that you probably have never heard. So yeah, check it out. And thanks. Thanks again. Thank you for joining us on this spirited journey today.
We hope you enjoyed diving into the world of self-improvement with us. Two sisters who found their own unique paths.
Remember, life is a tapestry of experiences, and it's how we embrace them that makes all the difference.
So whether you're on your yoga mat, exploring mindfulness, or simply navigating life's twists and turns, always keep that spirit and sass alive.
We are Colin and Nerdy Lockup, and we're here to remind you that happiness and abundance are within reach.
Stay connected with us on social media and keep those questions and stories coming. We love hearing from you.
Until next time, beautiful souls, keep doing the work, keep sharing your experiences, and keep living a life that's authentically you.
And never forget to add a little extra sass to your day.
Spirit and sass, always.